So who do they benefit? Do they benefit larger corporations that get cheap labor?
They benefit, yeah.
So let me get
meat
this straight.
Processing plants and whatnot. Oh, that's why I want them to have documents. Let them come to the border. Give them documents so that they can get worker protections.
So then if that's the case, you know what that validates? Joe Biden and the Democratic policies are better for the billionaires than Trump's are because they brought in cheap labor. And that cheap labor helps who? Helps the rich.
This was the craziest gotcha I've ever seen in my life. This is legitimately debate bro final boss. I think what he doesn't understand is that Sam Seder is not a diehard Democrat and Sam Seder does not like the Republicans, right? We all understand that both Democrat and Republican policies are trash. All right, Sam Seder debate. I heard this is a really good debate. It's only 30 minutes. Let's watch it. Let's react to it.
You're sitting here saying you guys think you got better policies?
No, I think Kamala Harris is, I mean, I think it was what Biden did in staying in was atrocious. He should have gotten out way earlier. Yeah. There's a story coming out now of like Ron Klain seeing him before the debate and realizing the guy was a mess. And I think Harris's campaign was also poorly run. I think that, nobody could tell what her policies were. Mark Cuban's going out there saying we're going to get rid of. Right, I agree. Mark Cuban's coming out there saying like, oh, don't worry, she's not going to do any more of this antitrust stuff. On one hand, I don't want a billionaire coming out and speaking for my candidate.
Did you vote for her? Or did you sit that one out?
No, I voted for her.
You voted for Kamala. Why? Just because
we're not Trump?
Very rational. No, hold on. What did you? I want to hold on. You voted. This is what drives me crazy about your side. You guys voted
for the lesser of two evils.
That is what policy were you going for? What do you think that she was going to do different? What can you possibly? I would rather have you sit that one out, Sam. Go ahead.
I'll tell you.
Go ahead.
She was not going to cut Social Security functioning. She's not going to cut the USDA. She's not going to cut the FDA. She's not going to lose us $500 billion worth of return on investment with the IRS.
I think this whole conversation about voting for Kamala or Donald Trump or third party is very interesting because when the elections were happening, there was just so much chaos and tension around it. And I have always voted Democrat, always. I've always been a Democrat voter. I just can't bring myself to ever vote for a Republican, and I will never vote for a Republican. That's just point blank, period. There was so much hurt around Kamala Harris and Biden and what they did in Gaza that it was very hard for someone like me to advocate for people to vote for her because she did so much destruction there. But I also, her administration did so much destruction there. But I also knew that Donald Trump was going to be 10 times worse in all aspects of the margin. When it comes to Palestine, I think all American presidents are going to be heinous and terrible. I don't think that's going to change across, blue or red lines. But when it comes to domestic and international issues that pertain to other things, I did feel like Donald Trump was going to be way worse. Now, I think there's so much shaming with people who voted for Kamala Harris, and I actually don't agree with that because I personally understand why a lot of people still voted for her. There are a lot of different marginalized communities in America, like trans folks, LGBTQI folks, people who have uteruses, women who get pregnant, women who need reproductive care, people who are Medicaid, Medi-Cal, people who are on food stamps. There are so many there's a spectrum of marginalized groups that were genuinely so scared of Donald Trump being president. And I would never shame anyone for voting for Kamala Harris because they wanted to protect themselves and their community. And I don't think that's my place to shame them. But there was also this huge movement on social media, like a lot of Jill Stein and third party supporters were shaming a lot of people online and commenting on people's posts and saying, oh my God, you're not voting third party. I was getting so many DMs, people asking me why I'm not endorsing third party and shaming me. I lost so many followers because I refused to endorse third party for president. And I'm just like, listen, if you cannot have a chance of getting elected, I'm not going to vote for you and I'm not going to advocate for you. I'm sorry. I take my platform very seriously. I'm not just going to throw it at anyone who says that they're running for president.
She's not going to cut the Bureau of Labor Statistics. She's not going to cut 300
investment
return on investment.
Tax avoid.
Every dollar that you give to the IRS would get 6 or 7 back. She's not going to cut the museum and library. Did you just say that? Google it. Every dollar spent at the IRS gets 6 back. in returns.
Goodness.
They're anticipating the cuts from Doge. The cuts from Doge are going to cost our government $500 billion.
According to who?
Studies suggest.
All right, I undersold it a little bit.
According to who?
Okay, well, you can spend time attacking the people who do these calculations. Do you need me to tell you more about why?
What I'm just curious. Yeah, I'm just curious to
just
what
rando tariffs applied in a willy-nilly fashion that crash the economy.
So you don't think the tariffs that Trump is, and I get it. That's exactly the tariffs are exactly what America needs right now. Because let's just go to the border. What he did with the border with Mexico, with the tariffs, what happened to fentanyl? What happened to all the deaths? What happened to all those illegals that are coming? What do you mean? He threatened them, and they went to war.
Fentanyl comes across the border at ports of entry. Fentanyl comes across the border, not in illegals crossing the desert. It comes in.
Oh, really? Coyotes
really?
and really?
It comes in.
Yep.
Yeah. It comes in at ports of entry. Google that.
You want to know what's actually crazy? And I'm surprised that Sam Seder isn't bringing this up. More than 80% of the fentanyl that comes into America is actually from U.S. citizens. U.S. citizens are the ones that are bringing the fentanyl in. So it's not the undocumented folks.
Sam, I don't need to Google when it's like,
yes, you do.
You said you voted for someone. You're coming up with these policies. The worst pick ever, the biggest loss ever. She lost everything because your side, you're talking about people. Wait, let me ask you a question. You're acting like your whole side was surprised that Biden wasn't there. Everybody knew, including you, he wasn't there at all. But you guys are like, he's just not Trump. The worst president in the history of the world in this country, 4 years, because you guys were pretending that he was all there and we knew it. And who was making all the decisions? Who was making all the decisions? Who was signing all the shit? Who was signing off? How many times did you have to see Biden sitting there and they'd ask him a question and he'd go, oh, I can't because they told me I couldn't. He wasn't in charge.
Who?
Yeah, who was they? Come on, Sam. It's like the most devastating loss. The world, the country is over it. You guys aren't pivoting, okay? And if you think the future is Gavin Newsom, AOC, Bernie Sanders, and Jasmine Crockett, you guys are doomed. Nothing is going to change. And Elon Musk, you think Elon Musk is a net positive or a net negative for society, for what he's doing? And pointing out what the hell, these people have been screwing us for all these years, and he's pointing out. You guys are mad at the person pointing out who robbed from you than the actual robber. That's the truth, bro. Yeah, he's a billionaire. You think he's doing it because he needs the money?
What fraud has he found?
What do you mean? How much fraud has he found?
Yeah, where's the person who is going to be indicted for fraud?
Well, what about the waste?
What waste?
Because it's not. Stop it, Sam.
What waste? They just cut the
Sam.
They cut the agency that provides $295 million to museums and libraries. You appreciate libraries, don't you? I know how much reading is important to you.
Sam, you're pinpointing the one good thing that they probably did.
No, wait.
What about the waste of countries all around the world for LGBTQ agendas in Rwanda or something?
The money you're talking about.
Do you want money going to
a fraction of a percentage? And if we wanted to get rid of that money, there is a way of doing it, and that is to have Congress vote and reverse what they authorized in the first place.
Sam.
But to have a billionaire come in and decide based upon what his personal preferences are that he's going to cut government in this way, I'm sorry, that's not democracy. It's not even remotely close to it.
He doesn't have the power to do anything. He makes a suggestion.
Why do you think
and
Americans
then the administration
voted for this?
will do it?
Why do you think Americans voted for
I
these
don't think
policies?
Americans heard the word Doge outside of it being some type of crypto before.
Why do you think Americans voted for Trump?
Well, I think because they want change.
This is so interesting because he responds to their point that they make and then they just like switch to the next question without actually hearing what he has to say. And it's crazy because all these people think that Elon Musk is doing this out of the kindness of his heart because he really cares about American politics. If you want to talk about government waste, you need to look at how much federal funding we've given Elon Musk for his little fucking side quests like Neuralink and putting chips in chimpanzee brains. You know what I mean? It's actually insane how much taxpayer money, how much of your money has gone to Elon Musk's endeavors, federal money and whatnot. None of them want to talk about that, which by the way, Neuralink for the most part has been pretty much a failure. They have killed so many chimpanzees trying to put these brain chips in them and shit like that. It just hasn't worked. It hasn't been a workable thing.
What else you think?
I think for a 90% of his voters voted for Mitt Romney. I think there is the Republican Party wants to, have tax cuts.
How do we get inflation? How does inflation
Can we
happen?
stay in 2024? You said inflation.
Tom, give me 1 second. How does inflation happen?
inflation can happen in a couple of different ways. Inflation can happen because you have too much monetary supply.
Yeah.
Inflation can happen in terms of both from a monetary supply level or a fiscal stimulus.
Right.
And inflation can also happen if you have a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic that completely screws up all of your logistics. And so you've got, shipping containers that usually cost $4,000 to ship, but now they cost $22,000 to get because they're in far-flung places because the pandemic.
That was in 2021. That was in 2021.
Well, it reverberates through the thing. We
Right.
saw inflation dropping through 2024.
Sure.
We saw, we saw rate cuts on the table because we saw inflation
dropping.
dropping.
Any of it was with, again, so those are the main two issues. You don't think anything else. So you mainly think it was inflation, and your second point was?
Well, I think in large part, we have structural problems in this country, and that's why we keep getting change elections where we keep going back and forth. And I would say those structural problems range from, I think a lot of them have to do with wealth inequality.
Okay. So you think Democrats are better at helping wealth inequality or Republicans?
I think Democrats are marginally better.
Tell me, due to what policy?
Well, taxation helps. That's a big part. Strengthening labor. I think, during Biden, I have a lot of problems with Biden, but
where 6% of the workers work from home. Yeah. So how about
labor? I mean, strengthening labor
Right.
strength in the marketplace helps with wealth inequality. I think antitrust goes a long way to wealth inequality because it literally is to break up the concentration
Here's the
of
other
wealth.
question for you. So Trump's closed up the border, right? Where we are not getting, and like this, numbers have dropped dramatically.
Well, I mean, if you go back and look in the, and I don't necessarily agree with Biden doing this, but if you go back and look at the numbers starting in the summer of 2024, maybe a little bit before.
Stop it.
I'm sorry. Just put it up there.
When he started
Put a graph up. But listen, I'm not in favor of him doing this, but he did do it. Wait, put up the graph of.
So you mean in an election year? An election year, he tried to slow down the border?
Let me just get through this. And guys, here's what I'd like to do.
I'm not in favor of it, but he did it.
I'd like to get through some stories, but I just want to close the knot here and move on because we're not going to make any progress.
You know what's interesting? I think they keep asking him questions because they want to see what answer he can give that they can poke holes into. But he gives such educated answers and he's so on point that they can't really poke holes into what he's saying. So they're just switching the topic and asking him questions and just waiting for him to like fuck up at one point. But the thing is, when your job is news, especially when you're a streamer or when you're in a studio and you cover the day-to-day news, you are so knowledgeable on news and just the government and everything that you can just pull things left and right, things that the average person doesn't know. When I used to stream every single day, I was so well in tune with everything happening in the world, and it was like a double-edged sword because I was very educated on everything happening, but also my mental health was trash. And it was a lot to do, right? Like I had to stream for a lot of hours in order to be that understanding and like conscious of everything going on. You know what I mean?
You can get a graph of that.
Rob, if you just want to show up graph on immigration from 2021, 22, 22, is that the chart you want to see? What do you want to see?
Let's see the one over the past. You said he's dropped it dramatically in January, and I'm suggesting to you if you look at the past 12 months.
No, it's the okay. Rob, do me a favor, find the chart on immediately when Trump comes in, what happens to illegal immigration in America. While you're doing that, here's a question for you. 10 million illegal immigrants came through the border in 4 years under Biden.
Way more.
You're saying it's more?
What's the number of undocumented immigrants you think we have in this country right now?
What I'm asking is those 4 years. How many do we have during those 4 years?
That came
through, that we have, according to credible sources. What's the number you hear?
That are in the country now, or actually just crossed?
Illegally during those 4 years.
Oh, I would imagine it's probably close to like 5, 6, maybe to 10 million.
Let's say 10 million people.
Tom Homan said 10 million.
Let's say it's 10 million. Let's say it's 10 million, but give or take 2 million. Let's just say it's 10 million, the number. Okay, those 10 million people that are coming here, are they rich?
No, the vast majority of them, I would say,
are poor, right? Okay, that they're coming here. Who does that benefit? They're going to need jobs, right? And what are they willing to work for?
Oh, I think they're going to get exploited without a doubt if that's where you're going with this.
Oh, so let me get this straight. So who do they benefit? Do they benefit larger corporations that get cheap labor?
They benefit, yeah.
So let me get this straight.
Meat processing plants.
Oh my
and
God.
whatnot. Oh, that's why I want them to have documents. Let them come to the border. Give them documents so that they can get worker protections.
So then, if that's the case, you know what that validates? Joe Biden and the Democratic policies are better for the billionaires than Trump's are, because they brought in cheap labor, and that cheap labor helps who? Helps The rich. When
I am in favor of.
This was the craziest gotcha I've ever seen in my life. This is legitimately debate bro final boss. I think what he doesn't understand is that Sam Seder is not a diehard Democrat, and Sam Seder does not like the Republicans, right? We all understand that both Democrat and Republican policies are trash. Okay, we all understand that undocumented immigrants help the capitalists and the corporations. Actually, most of the children that get harmed in factories, like that work as factory workers that are working illegally and then somehow die because of some sort of, factory worker fatality, they're mostly undocumented children. And so, yeah, that's why we're all pro documentation, so that they can get their documentation and they can work and they can make the money that they deserve to make, or at least minimum wage, which is still not enough, but, better than nothing.
A path to citizenship that is much easier.
And by the way, those 10 million people that came here illegally, give or take.
And that was in that bill that they suggested in the fall of 2023 that Trump said he didn't want because he wanted to keep it as an issue.
Who do those 10 million people take jobs away from? Who do they take jobs away from?
I don't know that they take jobs away from that many.
Really?
No.
Really?
We are at, in 20 years ago, we were told that the lowest unemployment that it was possible to have with a functioning economy was what? Do you remember? It 2%? Was something like 6 to 8%. And now unemployment is at 4%. And so
it was lower than that before.
I continue.
You're not answering the question, though. Who do those people take jobs away from?
I have answered it. I think largely they don't take jobs away from people.
Oh, they don't?
Of course
they do. Hang on. Perfect. I love what you just said. You think they don't take jobs away from anybody. Perfect. So if we go and we look at when China started trading, let me make the point. When China came through and was able to bring labor to us, 1971, it was called the ping pong agreement that they had where, we can send labor there, and labor at the time was 8 cents to 20 cents an hour, where for us minimum wage was $1.60. Then in 2001, when the Clinton policies helped China join the World Trade Organization, and at the time, minimum wage in China was 20 cents to 50 cents, depending on different regions, and for us was $5.15. We lost 6 million manufacturing jobs, give or take the next 7 years. Michigan, you got Indiana, you got all these other places. Where did those jobs go to? Who did they replace? Who lost those jobs? What happened to Detroit?
All that manufacturing went to China.
That's right. So what do you think these 10 million people that come here, who are they going to take jobs away from? Americans who are here legally. Those jobs are going to go to somebody that's cheap labor.
That was the movement of capital. Capital decided that it was cheaper for them to move to
I'm specifically
China.
talking about the last 4 years. So when you're saying labor is not going to be taken from people in America, that's the credibility you lose. That's where people in 2000... Rob, can you play the clip with Stephen A. Smith, who has been a staunch supporter of the Democratic Party for decades? And now Stephen A. Smith is being called as a member of MAGA. Rob, we can't play the whole thing. Can you go to the main part? Do you know the main part or no?
I do. Right after he reads this is when he responds.
Okay, let's see what he says, Rob. Go for it.
Candace Owens, Sean Hannity, and other prominent voices from the right on this podcast as reasons for his premise. Here's a portion of what he wrote on MSNBC.com in an article titled ESPN Stephen A. Smith is a megaphone for MAGA propaganda. Jones says, quote, Stephen A. Smith's embrace of the MAGA movement and its influencers has only continued. In recent days, for example, he has spoken with right-wing commentators Ben Shapiro, Megyn Kelly, and Bill O'Reilly. You might be thinking that these were adversarial chats between a left-leaning centrist and a conservative. But to adroit listeners, they can come across more as conservatives in friendly discussion than anything else. Smith's overt politicism seems to fly in the face of ESPN's apparent effort in recent years to deter some of its talent from speaking on controversial political matters. Either way, the network's most recognizable host is now regularly platforming MAGA propaganda at will, end quote. Now, my team reached out to Jones to have a discussion about the article. I wanted to invite him on the show to talk with me one-on-one personally. I hope we get the opportunity to have that dialogue. He was busy. He didn't avoid the call or anything like that. There was no comment or anything like that. He didn't say anything. He was just very, very busy. What we called it the last minute. No shade on him. That's why it didn't happen. But in the meantime, let me express to you what I think about what he wrote. I think that's the exact problem with the left. You see, if I don't agree with you, I must be MAGA. It must be the case. I'm platforming MAGA propaganda. Is that so? I don't view it that way. First of all, even though I lean left, particularly with how I vote with presidential elections, I want to emphasize that I've always been a centrist my entire life. I've never once described myself as a Democrat or a Republican. I'm a centrist. I'm a moderate. I don't trust either side. I'm not on one side or the other, hook, line, or sinker. You will see images, or you'll hear me rattle off names of people who've been on this show. Yes, you see Ben Shapiro there. Yes, you see Bill O'Reilly there. Yes, I was recently on Megyn Kelly's show. Did you know I'm on News Nation with Chris Cuomo every week? Did you know that I just appeared with Jake Tapper on CNN? Do you know I've been on MSNBC on several occasions? Do you know?
You can pause.
Yes,
here.
Sean.
So, do you know what happens when a guy like Stephen A. Smith, he said he's always voted left when it comes down to presidential candidates that he has. So he's not a guy that voted for Trump, right?
If you sit at the same table as Ben Shapiro, Megyn Kelly, and you're telling me, oh, I've been on MSNBC a couple of times too, therefore I'm not a Republican, I'm just going to assume that you lean right. I agreed with what he was saying at first, kind of, when he was like, oh, if you say one thing that they don't like, leftists call you MAGA, which I do. Sometimes it even happens to me. Sometimes I say something that people don't like and they're like, oh, you must be MAGA, you must love Elon Musk. And I'm like, no, that's not the case, obviously, moron. But to say that, oh, you're wrongfully assuming that I'm a Republican even though I was hanging out with all these people on my show, you're still wrong, then that's a little crazy to me. That's a little crazy because I know many people who align with the Democratic Party who vote Democrat, and you will never see them sitting at the same table as Ben Shapiro or Megyn Kelly, unless it's to vehemently debate them. And even then, I don't think they would do it. And I'm not saying that all people who vote Democrat are a monolith, right? But clearly his actions are showing that he is cozy with Republicans. And when there's such a huge divide between Republicans and Democrats, a divide that also entails fascism and not believe in basic human rights, then people are going to assume that you're a Republican, and in my opinion, rightfully so.
When a guy like him comes out and he says, what the hell is going on with the Democratic Party?
Is that what he's saying there?
Oh, he said it many. You must not follow what he
says.
says, because he has said that nonstop the last 2 months, 3 months.
I don't follow what he says.
You should. He's actually very good. He's reasonable. It would be good for you to watch. I like his approach. I think he's a...
Do you guys identify as MAGA?
No.
No, you guys identify as MAGA?
Here's my question. Can I ask a question?
He seems to think it's an insult.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Make America great again. It shouldn't be if you want to make America great again, I'm all in. Call me MAGA all freaking day.
I'm MAGA. I'm MAGA. I just want to make America great.
He seems to take it as an insult.
No, I am America first. I'm America first. I voted for Trump in 2016. I voted for him 2020. In 2022, when people were leaving to the DeSantis camp, I stayed on the Trump camp. Yep. I've never been off that camp. He's the right guy for America, and I've been a registered independent now for about 17 years.
What do you think about these tariffs?
No, stay on this topic here with Stephen A. We'll go to tariffs next. We'll go to
some guy from I've never heard of from
Stephen A. I've never heard of Stephen A. Smith.
No, the guy who wrote the
thank God.
something about him.
Yeah, but what do you think about Stephen A.? You know what he's been talking about lately with the Democratic Party.
He's a centrist. I don't have to subscribe to what a centrist perspective. I mean, he's a centrist, like Gavin Newsom is a centrist.
Gavin Newsom is a centrist.
Gavin Newsom is saying the exact same thing as Stephen A. Smith.
How? Because he realizes progressive policies have been a disaster.
Okay, I mean, so that's
he's a centrist as of a week ago when you realize progressiveness is horrible.
Maybe it's
Come on, Sam.
Maybe it's like
I just, you don't understand. You guys don't seem to understand.
Welcome to Bizarro World.
I have a set of politics. I don't care what Stephen A. Smith does. I don't care what Gavin Newsom does.
Yeah.
I don't care.
So you're rigid. You're not changing anything.
It's not a question of I'm rigid and I'm not changing anything. Like there are specifics. Like over time, I have had a different perspective on the deficit over the past 20 years and understood it in a different way.
You become more liberal over the last 20 years. You become more of a leftist and progressive.
You got to be more malleable.
I would say
you got to be more malleable,
extent,
buddy.
I mean, to the extent, like I don't, like you guys have these like labels that you like to use, and there's some
like
type of gradation.
Yeah.
But
Labels.
I've always
like
been
labels like
I've always
tax
been
avoiders.
about where I am in terms of taxation, but I am for a little bit more decommodification probably than I was 20 years ago.
And all I'm saying here before we go, look, I'm going to go to the audience. Audience, we're coming to you here in a second to go through some of the stories here.
Why wait? We're going to talk about tariffs?
We're going to talk about whatever stories we go through. But the one thing we did learn here with you is America grew up the last 4 years.
Why aren't they answering the tariff question? That's so interesting to me. They asked Sam Seder so many questions, and Sam Seder answered them with so much patience. And Sam Seder keeps asking them about the tariffs, and they're not responding. Can you talk about the tariffs, please, since you are such a diehard Trump camper? I'm just curious. I just want to know.
Adam, sorry about that.
America grew up the last 4 years. Many Democrats grew up. Every state became more Republican because of the horrible policies on the left, whether it was how they handled COVID, what they did with our kids, how they handled people that didn't want to take the vaccine, and people were fed up. And they voted for a guy who had already been president for 4 years. So it's not like they said they want something new. They said, no, we want to go back to the guy previous to that guy. That is the biggest black eye to Obama, to Kamala, to Democrats, to everybody on the left, when they went back to the guy that they said they didn't want 4 years later, saying, it's like an ex coming back and saying, babe, I messed up. I should have never gone with the other guy. You were my guy. Or guy, babe, I screwed up. I should have never left you for the other girl. I'm such a dummy. Please, Trump, come back. That's what America did. And a guy like you, who's
I'm not a big fan
of
Obama's, and I'm not a big fan of Harris's either.
But the point is, you still haven't graduated Sanders. That's like 7th grade. The people that follow Sanders and AOC are in 7th grade, 8th grade. Their heroes are in high school. Your philosophies are popular in high schools, not with adults. The policies that you support are high school policies.
They were not popular when I was in high school.
Oh, are you kidding me? Karl Marx was a hero in kids that went to high school because teachers were feeding the Karl Marx stuff.
I went to high school. Ronald Reagan was president. I can assure you that, and the wall still existed, and there was fear of communism, and that socialism was barely ever expressed.
You're a step away from communism. Like socialism is a step away from communism. That's kind of where you are. You're right there saying, guys, I don't want to fully publicly say I'm a communist. I'll stay in this room.
I'm not.
Because it's like MAGA.
I don't even identify as a socialist either.
You're a progressive, though.
I would say I'm a progressive.
So
I mean,
what's
is
right of progressive? What's left of progressive? I know you're not big on labels, but just humor me. What's right and left of being a progressive?
I'm probably a social democrat, so I would say that there is a certain amount of society.
They're tying having progressive values to AOC and Bernie Sanders, right? Which AOC and Bernie Sanders are not the representative of that by any means. They are very vocal about their beliefs, but they're not necessarily the representative of anyone that has progressive values. Furthermore, they're saying that, hey, these beliefs are only existent in, 7th graders and children and young people. Why is it that young people tend to lean more progressive as opposed to the boomer and the older generation? Is it because children just don't understand, the younger generation just don't understand? Or is it because the younger generation doesn't have a chance for anything? We don't have a chance for buying a house. We don't have a chance for going up the corporate ladder. The American dream is dead. We don't have any insurance. We're all drowning in student loan debt that you more than likely didn't have, or at least not to the extent that we have. We are living in crazy inflation. Back then when Sam Seder was young, you could live off of a minimum wage job very easily. You can afford an apartment. You could afford your food. You could afford to live a life based off of minimum wage. You can work 2 minimum wage jobs and barely pay rent for a 1-bedroom apartment now. So, and also, yeah, exactly. Gen Z is becoming more conservative. It's more of a trend amongst Gen Z men than women. There's a huge gender divide happening in politics, and we can spend another time talking about that. But Gen Z women are leaning a lot more socialist and progressive. Gen Z men are leaning a lot more conservative, and that's mainly because of the loneliness pandemic, as well as the Andrew Tate stuff, which we can get into another time.
Where I believe we do not need the private market to deliver it, and is less efficient. So when it comes to health insurance, we have already in this country 1/3, maybe a little more actually, on some form of government health insurance. The VA is actually government health care. The doctors work for the government. And that actually gets very, very high
marks.
And
all I hear is good things about the VA.
The VA
everybody
gets
loves
high
VA.
marks?
No, the healthcare does, yeah.
Vinny, you go to the VA.
Who? That's 100% false.
From
I
the
get
dead
the
guys.
worst service from the VA. And I'm a veteran and he's a veteran. He doesn't go to the VA. I go to the VA. I called yesterday just to make an example in our work area. I called. Nobody's picking up the phone for me to get an appointment. Zero. And when you go there, it's the most depressing thing.
But the good news is when you go to get your to the DMV, the driver's license, that's great service,
right?
No,
that's the best. Yeah, that's the best.
Well,
No, the VA is not good.
The states run the DMVs,
really
but
like
my
to do
experience
this
at the DMV is not that bad.
You wanna
But
go to therapy?
Respectfully, there's one.
Literally anyone that has ever spoken to a veteran knows how shitty the VA is. That's just like a very well-known fact that the VA is shitty. That's like basic at this point.
One thing you said, there's one thing you said. You
go
said
to
the
therapy?
private market is less efficient. We can look at 250 years of government and everything we've got here. I just can't get
What's the
past that. And if
administrative
that's
cost for Medicare?
And if that's your,
What's the administrative cost for Medicare?
Hang on. If that's your one of your foundational beliefs that the private markets will be less efficient, then it's no wonder you're where you are. I'm not going to pick on it. If that's your foundational
What
belief,
is the administrative
then
cost for Medicare?
Tell us.
2 to 3 cents of every dollar in Medicare is spent on administrative costs. In the private health
Administrative
insurance,
defined as what? You got to be careful. I got to be careful when I hear things like that because guess what? You go back and you look at, well, I was only counting this. I'm not counting this. It's like the same way.
You have a dollar.
Same way your side would count unemployment and come out later and readjust all the stats.
97 to 98 cents actually goes to paying Medicare providers, doctors, we're going
to move on. We're going to move on because your core tenet that the private markets are less efficient is wrong.
17 cents on every dollar.
We can't discuss
because
anything.
They're paying for advertising, they're paying for shareholder value, et cetera, et cetera. So for every dollar you spend, and on top of which, anybody who has private health insurance who deals with it themselves knows it's like having a second job, just to either get reimbursed or you get to figure out every year when you re-sign up, is my doctor in or out of the program? It's a mess. It's a disaster.
Medicare
is the most
so good and
possible.
so wonderful.
People
Why was
love Medicare.
MedSup and Medicare Advantage invented? It's so good, Medicare.
Because
it's
the
everything
Republicans
for you.
want it.
They're not letting Sam Seder speak. If you're going to refute one of his points, at least let the man fucking speak. It's like every single time Sam Seder wants to put them in the place, they're like, no, we can't talk about it. It's a foundational issue. Like, you brought it up, but you brought Sam to your podcast, I'm assuming, to speak to him. Can you please let the man talk?
To privatize it, and it is
really? I
widely
don't get drug
understood
benefits.
that Medicare Advantage is the worst part of Medicare, and people get sucked into it, and they find out that they've been hoodwinked. I mean, these are all easily found data points.
Sam, did you fly here?
Yeah.
Did you go through TSA? Did you go through TSA pre-check? Did you go through Clear? What'd you go through?
On the way here, my TSA pre-check was not on the thing, so I just went
It's
through.
messed up. You paid for it though, right?
Yeah, it was $60 for the TSA.
No, I'm saying, but you pay, I think, it was like a $500 or $100 for 5 years for TSA pre-check.
TSA pre-check, I think, is $65 for 5 years.
That's amazing. It's a great deal. Why don't you do Clear?
I don't want to do a private company.
TSA pre-check is basically like a public-private partnership.
No,
where
TSA
you pay a little bit more.
pre-check is pre-check is the government.
You pay a little bit more.
Adam,
I'm not going to give my biometrics
he
to Clear.
looks at private companies and he frowns upon private companies.
Is that what's going on?
Because that's all it is.
I didn't fully understand.
He said, "I'm not going to give my money to a private company." And just so you know, and that's just
you own and run one.
Yeah. So let's go to the next story with Terry.
Can we stay there for a second, please? You don't want to give money to a private company, but you are a private
Well,
company.
I don't
You're
want to
trying
give
make
my
money.
biometric information to a private company.
You're using it
or your dollars.
What about just private companies in general?
I'm happily fine with TSA
Guys,
pre-check.
we already got it. I'm moving.
Let's
Adam,
move on.
Okay, I'm learning.
I'm moving on.
I'm
No,
learning.
I already learned. I understand. It's great. So we know what the argument is.
Progressive.
That was one of the worst debates I've watched. He did not let Sam Seder respond. I mean, it was basically trying to gotcha clip farm for shorts or whatever the fuck they use it for. I mean, if I'm watching a debate, I want to see both sides speak. If you're going to have 5 guys speak over one man repetitively and not let him make a single point unless you want to get your gotcha clip, then like, what's the point of the debate? Well, you know what? What's crazy? Okay, you're saying that this is a Piers Morgan tactic, right? The thing about Piers Morgan is that at the very least, for the most part, sometimes he doesn't, but for the most part, he lets people speak and make their point. As ridiculous as their points can be, he does give them a couple minutes to make their point, and then he gives a couple minutes for the other side to make their point too, right? I just don't think this was given here at all. I felt like I was fighting for my life trying to understand what Sam Seder was saying, and they would ask Sam Seder a bunch of questions. Sam Seder would very calmly respond to all of them, and then the minute Sam Seder asked them a question about the tariff, they never responded. The minute Sam Seder would respond in a question where they could do a little gotcha clip, they were all around it. They would only respond to him when they could do the gotcha. I don't know. It was a very crappy debate. That's probably one of the worst setups I've ever watched for a debate. That was really bad.